Mine's on, yours is green, to be honest.
Yep, mine's green now. Okay. Let's stand for the pledge.
Mine's on, yours is green.
I pledge allegiance
green
to the
now.
flag of the United
Stand for
States
the
of
pledge.
America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, pledge allegiance to the flag indivisible of the United
Stand for
States
the
of
pledge.
America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, pledge allegiance to the flag indivisible of the United
Stand for
States
the
of
pledge.
America
So,
and to the
this is my
republic
first
for
time
which
in
it
this
stands,
seat, so
one nation,
everybody,
pledge allegiance to the
please
flag
be nice.
indivisible of the United
Stand for
States
the
of
pledge.
America.
So, this is my first time in this seat, so
every
the
Routine items.
the routine items here. So we have the minutes of the regular meeting on January 10th, and then accept and order file the minutes listed here, or the dates listed here for the Committee on Special Education and for the Committee on Preschool Special Education. So do we have a motion for that? So moved. Crystal, second. Heidi, excellent. Okay, good with that.
All those in favor?
All those in favor? Okay.
What we got?
And then we're going to turn it over to
So we got 7 people tonight, right?
Mr. Ward for the superintendent's report.
Yeah. Excuse me. So a few things to talk about tonight. So we're going to start with the fun things. Well, actually, we'll start with the fun things, then a fun thing that's coming in the future being June. So we have a young lady here tonight. I think it's on. Yep. So we have a young lady here tonight with her parents. I told her the pressure is going to be immense tonight, but we like to take the time at the beginning of our meetings to recognize young people who are doing great things, representing Hudson Falls well. And so tonight that young lady is Emma Hammond. And she's here with her mom and dad, Amanda and Stephen Hammond. And I thank them all for coming tonight. So Emma is receiving the Teen Excellence Award. And there's a breakfast ceremony coming up soon. I forget the exact date of that. But the Teen Excellence Award, sponsored by the Post-Star and some local businesses, recognizes young people who demonstrated individual growth, leadership development, and serve as exceptional role models for the other students here in our school and in the community at large. So, Emma, we do have her certificate for you, and if you want 5 or 10 minutes to talk and give a long speech, you can. We'd like to get a photo with you as well, if possible. So if you don't mind coming up, we'll go around front and get a photo. And congratulations to you. Congratulations to you.
Alright, everybody ready? 1, 2, 3. Perfect.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say congratulations to the parents. It means a lot to have a family that brings up a young lady like Emma. And I know that Emma, you and I don't know each other very well, but I know a lot about that award, what it takes to get it. And again, we haven't had a recipient from Hudson Falls in several years. So congratulations to you. Second, we have a staff member tonight. I'm going to make you come back.
I don't know why I
around.
did that.
But I'm going to speak from this side. So we also have a staff member the board wanted to recognize tonight upon my recommendation. So we have Mrs. Bree Steele here tonight, and she's here because I received notice from the American Association of Teachers of Spanish and Portuguese, the AATSP, so I had to write that down, that she has been a volunteer treasurer and coordinator of the national and local poster contest they do, and was also recognized by that group back on January 22nd for all the work that she's done. So we wanted to take the time. It's not often that a group reaches out to the superintendent and says, hey, this person's doing great things for our organization. Can you please recognize them? So thank you so much for the work that you're doing outside of school, again, representing Hudson Falls so well. We'd like you to come up. We're going to get a photo. We have a certificate for you. And congratulations to you. We'll give it back to the test tonight.
I like to be behind the camera, did you know?
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Perfect, thank you.
Use up all of them. Awesome, great. Yeah, thank you. Because it's going to happen soon. So this is the part of the meeting where I let people know who are here for recognition. You are welcome to stay for the entire meeting if you wish. The meetings are open to the public. It's also a great time, if you've got other things to do tonight, to skip out, knowing that it's Valentine's Day, you might have homework, you may have things to do. So we will not be offended. Stay as long as you want, or feel free to go. I understand you've got some little people at home. Yeah, for sure.
Bye.
Congratulations to all of you, and I'll see you again at the event, the breakfast event. Moving down, the 23-24 school calendar, that's on the agenda for approval this evening. So I put it on my report just to see if there's any questions. And I know I provided the draft in my weekly update a while back. I did field a couple of questions. One of the main questions was, why is the school year pushed so late next year? It does have a little bit to do with how some holidays fall for specific international religions that affect students and teachers and individuals in New York State, as well as the fact that the school year starts a little bit later. This year, I believe we started on the 2nd or 3rd. Next year, the school year starts on the 5th or 6th. So it pushes everything by 3 or 4 days. So that, along with some of those, the recognition of some of those holidays that are occurring, is what makes the calendar that you have. Teachers Association has 185 work days in their calendar. You'll see that there's 185 maximum days of work in there. That's what our calendar has listed. We did follow the BOCES template. We made a couple of changes to that. And I want to thank Mike and Kevin and the admin team and the principals for looking at that calendar and troubleshooting it. And also, she's not here tonight, but Jen French for taking a look at it as well ahead of time. So it's up for your approval this evening. If you have any questions, now's a great time. Okay. The other item that's on for approval tonight is the Board Education Operation Manual. We started that talk back in July or August when we had our retreat. We talked about training our new board members and making sure that they were able to get up to speed, because there's an awful lot. We had some people who said when I started there was an awful lot to learn, and we were looking for a more organized way to do that. The manual is part of that. The manual itself, I don't have the exact number of pages, so I keep using the number 30, so I'll use it again right now. The manual is somewhere around 30 pages, I believe. How I see it working is that when we have new board members that come on, if they don't have board experience, we ask them that maybe by September or October, they've gone through the first 10 or 15 pages, scratch their questions in the margins, and then we get a couple of current board members who feel like they understand those couple of items out of the manual, along with either Kevin or Mike or myself or other applicable people. And we sit down for a half hour or 40 minutes before a board meeting or on another date that works and go through their questions. Maybe that meeting takes 10 minutes, maybe it takes 45 minutes. And we do that 2 or 3 times during the year. That gets somebody through the entire manual without making it be too overwhelming. We certainly don't expect somebody to have all that information. But it's also a good reference for everybody else who's on the board, and we can take time to update it. And I want to thank Kelly and Kevin and Mike again for working with me to get that off the ground. It was a labor of love. So thanks to you guys for holding me accountable on that. And I think it's a good document for us to start off with. So any questions on or feedback on that? I know I've asked a couple of weeks in a row about that in my updates. So otherwise, I'm asking for you to approve it this evening, and then we'll have that as our operating manual to get through next year and any new board members that we might have. Lastly, it's a quick discussion item, and I think that we talked about it last July or August. Graduation. Mr. Benefield did approach me this week and said, I just want to understand and make sure I know what type of graduation is expected for this year. I think the consensus was after last year that we were looking at outdoor graduation on the football field. I just want to make sure that is still the consensus, because I'm going to set him loose on getting that set up for this year. So if we want to have a couple-minute conversation, or if that's the consensus of the board, then just let it be known.
I say outside.
You sure can.
If you plan on an outdoor graduation and weather doesn't permit it, then it just automatically gets moved back in?
That's correct. What we need to know is we have to choose that option by like Wednesday, Thursday. So we can't wait for the
Then
rain.
there would be a limited number of tickets per student rather than...
Mr. Benefield still thinks we'd be able to have pretty open seating in there.
You actually have plenty if you're inside the gym.
Right.
It's just a matter of setup and
Right,
Okay.
the setup, but we have to move everything inside, or not set it up outside and then move it in. That becomes pretty difficult. I don't want to say impossible, because nothing's impossible.
Sure.
But the last thing we want is to be doing that scramble if we don't have to be. The one thing that Mr. Benefield and I talked about was, I think this year we started at 10 or 10:30, was backing that up to 9 or 9:30. So we're out of the heat of the day. We did have a few people who had to seek shelter last year because of the heat. And many of you were there. It was a warm day out there, especially if you're a person who maybe is a little bit older or has some concerns with being out in the sun. I have some of those concerns myself, and I was baking in it. So any concern about it being a little bit earlier this year, like 9 or 9:30, to try to avoid the heat, or the rain if necessary? No, okay, got it. Football field, and we're probably going to go a little bit earlier. Thank you on that. So you've got two items. I thought I heard somebody say.
No, on that point though, is it still going to be virtual as well?
Streamed out?
Yes.
Would you, I mean, is that, I guess we have not talked about that. I would assume we were going to continue to do that, but
Yeah,
I,
I'm assuming you still would for
Yep.
older people, or if it does get hot.
yep, so you mean streamed out so they can get the link and watch it?
Yes.
Yep, so,
We're not going to stop doing it.
I don't plan to, no, as long as the board supports that. Again, there's an expense involved with all that, but it's, I don't know the exact number, but it makes sense that if you've got a grandmother in Florida or something like that who can't get here, that happens once in a lifetime, right, that high school graduation. So I will make that point to Mr. Benefield as well, okay? Brett, that wasn't you, we had somebody from the outside who did that, correct? For the graduation. It was you, okay, there you go. All taken care of. And there was support by our IT team, for sure. Other questions about graduation? So that brings you to the next page of your agenda. There's two motions. Do you want me to keep going, or do you want it back?
I think I can do it.
You got it?
Yeah, okay. So we need a motion to approve the calendar. So be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Hudson Falls Central School District approves the 2023-24 school calendar. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And then we need to approve the Board of Ed operating manual. So be it resolved. What now?
You had to do a vote. Did you do a vote on the first one?
We had a first and a second, yeah?
Did you do all those in favor? Did you? I don't.
No. All those in favor for the calendar? Aye. Okay.
Okay, so it's 7-0. Got it. And then the second motion.
Now the operating manual. Be it resolved, the Board of Ed of the Hudson Falls Central School District approves the Board of Education operating manual. Do I have a motion? Mike, second?
Second.
Crystal, all those in favor? Thank you. Opposed?
Abstaining.
Okay.
Nailed it.
All right. On to this, right? Okay, public comments. Does anyone have any public comments? Okay. So then we will go on to our committees. We'll start with personnel. So, Mr. Canini.
Everything's pretty routine this month. There's intramurals and some summer school appointments, but what I wanted to point out was we have 2 teachers retired, Ann Santoro with 30 years experience, and Penny Gallagher with 29 years, and 3 aides, Colleen Giddo with 23 years, Susan Kill with 22 years, and Lisa with 24 years. And it's over 125 years, so it's nice to see the long term.
Yeah,
For sure.
Congratulations to them.
Yeah.
You just got to get till the end of the year, right? That's
Yes.
good for them.
And we approve personnel by consent, correct? Yes, if anyone have any questions about anything with that? Okay, so that is done. We will move on to athletics with Mr. Fitzgerald.
All right. Bear with me. You got a little bit of a novel here tonight. Lots going on in our school district. So first up, a couple of milestones for our winter sports for boys and girls basketball. On January 20th, Peyton Smith became the 6th boys basketball player in Hudson Falls history to score 1,000 points. Big accomplishment for him. And on January 14th, Coach Rob Teft earned his 300th career victory as the girls varsity basketball coach. congratulations to both of them. Great accomplishments. Also, our wrestling team had a successful postseason. They won the Section 2 Class CC championship. Jesse Mullis and Colin Diffie both placed first in that tournament. We had 10 wrestlers compete in the state qualifier tournament last weekend. We had 6 of them place in the top 6 for Section 2 Division 2. Jesse Mullis won first place for his class. He'll be going to states. And his younger brother Justin placed second, also going to states. So great job by both of them. Also with wrestling, Coach Mike Pendergrass and Steve Scarsoletto were named Section 2 Class CC Coaches of the Year. I believe this was the second year in a row for them. So congratulations on that as well. Boys and girls basketball sectionals are starting this week. We're waiting to find the matchup dates and times. The seeding meeting is tomorrow. Competitive cheer will have its first ever Foothills Championship next Thursday in Schuylerville. Then they'll compete for another Section 2 championship Saturday the 25th in Colony. Boys swimming and diving will have individuals competing in sectionals this weekend at Shenendehowa. The bowling team finished second at the Foothills Championship Tournament, and they finished 10th out of 21 teams at Section 2 championships. So a good season for them as well. Boys and girls hockey teams both won their respective leagues this season. The girls team, the Adirondack United, won a sectional title and is competing at the state Final Four this weekend. This is their inaugural season, so that's quite the accomplishment. The boys team, the Adirondack Rivermen, earned the #1 seed for the Section 2 tournament. So best of luck to both of them with their tournaments coming up. Spring, the Foothills Council has discussed creating a modified tennis schedule if there was enough interest amongst the member schools. Hudson Falls is looking to offer it as an intramural. We've done this before. Hopefully we'll gain some interest in it. Maybe offer that in the future. It's going to start with the middle school students before committing to a league schedule. And for merger opportunities, the administration and coaches from both Hudson Falls and Fort Edward have met to discuss the possibility of a football merger for the fall season 2023. The administration, coaches, and athletic committee are all in support of this merger that would provide student athletes in the neighboring district an opportunity to play football with Hudson Falls. If we continue to move forward with this, we will need board support at the March meeting. We're on a tight deadline for that because I believe all paperwork has to be submitted by April 1st to the league, Section 2 for approval. Any questions on any of that?
With the extra kids, what would that do to our, are we Class A right now, football, Class B?
I'm going to defer that to Ryan.
Class B, so we've looked into that as a formula when it comes to merging with other districts, and it would keep us under the number and still remain Class B.
Yep, and do want to make sure everybody has a chance to ask their questions because Mr. Fitzgerald is exactly right. There's not a lot of time to turn this around, and I think it's worth noting that Fort Edward reached out to us. It's been a couple of months, but that was the meeting that we did have, and it was, again, coaches, superintendents, principals, and athletic directors from both school districts that met up here in my office. Is that last week, 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago. And Fort Edward spoke about it at their board meeting last night. I did not have a chance to talk with their superintendent to see how it went. Mike said that he spent some time trying to see how it went, and it seemed like it was discussed, and there was very little comment or discussion about it. So want to make sure if folks have questions or concerns or things they want to get out there, that we get it out there now at the board level, because if it's a go, you're going to see a resolution next month for us to enter into that. And that will be all levels, modified up through varsity, is what their intention is at this point.
So everyone's in favor of this on the athletic committee and on both sides of it. Is there, like, what would a con be? Is there any potential?
Well, so you folks might know better than me. There's some history maybe between the school districts. Nothing that I'm aware of in my time at Fort Edward and now my time here in Hudson Falls. Right. So I'm not sure. I do sit as the chairperson for mergers for Section 2. So I have seen in the past where we have boards have conversations like this, not a board that I was a part of. And then when it comes to the vote, or even after there's been a vote and there's a successful athletic merger approved by the section, that folks come to board meetings and say that they thought it was the wrong decision for our community. So I just want to make sure that there's a conversation. I don't think there's a downside. We don't have the players we need to have the teams that we want to have with our own student membership. Ryan's here on purpose. He gets to be here on Valentine's Day with all of us as well to answer any questions you might have, but he can speak to the numbers, and by default, Brett is in the back. But we did talk about numbers and, if that would displace Hudson Falls kids. And something to know is that likely won't displace them, but if you have students who play ninth grade on the varsity team, they might be better suited for a JV team, but when we don't have enough student athletes, sometimes kids move up and down so that we can have the appropriate number of student athletes on a roster, which for football is 16, and we don't have trouble with the roster numbers in a school our size. 16 is the right number though, right, Ryan? Yeah, I don't know if you want to comment on that, Ryan?
Can I ask you a follow-up question?
Sure.
So like aside from maybe particular parents being upset over this downgrading their kids, like seniority or how high up they are in the athletic food chain, it would create a situation where all the players are playing at a more competitive level, whether it be JV or varsity. So like if your kid was going to be the ninth grader that would have been playing on varsity, but now you're upset because they're playing on JV, that like one or two parents. But overall, you're saying this would create an environment where all of the players are going to be playing at a more competitive level,
Right.
whichever level they're at,
So while
because we would have a greater group
While we
of.
might have had a kid in the ninth grade playing on the varsity team, in order to fill a spot, like Mr. Ward said, they might be best suited for
Right.
a JV, competing at the JV level versus being at the varsity because they might be better suited for that level of competitiveness.
But the addition of extra kids is just going to make it more competitive for all of them,
Sure.
in a good way.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Approximately how many kids is Florida would actually send you? How many intend to play?
From 7th through 12th grade, or
Yeah.
Say just high school.
I think the estimation was 15
Yep.
is the high school level.
Yep. When they broke down the numbers that they had brought that day, it was about 5 they figured would be varsity, 5 to 7 varsity. And they're obviously going on who they think is going to come out and play. And they 5 to 7 varsity, and then they say 5 to 7 JV, and then they thought they had about a dozen modified. And at modified, Hudson Falls in the past has had 2 modified teams. We haven't had that in several years. I don't know exactly how many that's been, but we would be open to having 2 teams so that kids could participate.
Is this a 2-year or 3-year?
So it's a 1 year. All mergers are renewable annually, although we did have conversations about intentions. And so right now, their intention would be to merge so that they have an opportunity for their student athletes based on the low numbers they're experiencing, with the hope that they could build a program to stand on their own again. That being said, we did talk about, well, after the first year, we probably want to talk about something a little bit longer term from Hudson Falls standpoint. It just makes sense for planning that we lock ourselves in, or at least commit to a few years together. But each year, the Board of Education has to approve that merger, so it comes back. Good enough?
Brian, do you have any thoughts on it?
Nothing additionally. I think being able to provide student athletes in a closed district the opportunity to play, I think it benefits all the kids involved.
What happens to their coaches?
Yep, so we did talk about that without going into too much detail. We did address that, and we believe we addressed it enough so that we're on the same page, that there's representation from both schools without displacing individuals. That's probably the best way for me to say it without naming names and positions. Yep. No?
Transportation to away games and stuff, would that be split between the districts as well, or?
Likely would be mostly Hudson Falls.
Okay.
So Fort Edward, 1, 2, 3 or 4 years ago, became a walking district. They own and operate 2 full-size buses, and maybe it's changed in the last 12 months, but they own and operate 2 full-size 66-passenger buses and 2 18-passenger buses, one with a wheelchair, and then 2 vans. That's the entire fleet down there. And maybe they've added 1 bus, maybe there's 3 full-size buses, but I'm not privy to that. So likely would be us. The nice part is that we're going right by there when we're going someplace anyways, most of the time. And the proximity, if you don't know what their emerging partners for Fort Edward have been in the past, they've been in Corinth, South Glens Falls, and prior to that, Corinth. Actually, makes a lot of sense. We're 2 miles from that school building to this building, about 2 miles, I would say. We'll figure out the logistics for sure. It won't be. I've been through quite a few athletic mergers, and you can figure out the logistics as long as you have people who are willing to have the conversations. Ryan does an excellent job of getting the information out there and coordinating things with our group. It would be very easy for him and he'd do a great job coordinating with another school district in a merger, because it just makes sense for our student athletes and theirs.
Practices and stuff, everything is here, or does that go back and forth
So
too?
some conversation about that. We said, really, we have a facility that's top notch compared to other foothills facilities. It's I think the best grass facility. Is it the only grass? But it's definitely the best grass facility, if not one of the top 2 grass facilities. So we did say likely the facility at Fort Edward, although it's great for a D-size school, it would not necessarily accommodate the size crowd that we get here at Hudson Falls. So they understood that, and it's so close.
Yeah.
It's so close
Yeah.
to us. So, no further questions. We'll, if you have some, you can reach out to me or to Ryan, or athletic committee, to Mike, or Jeff, or Amanda. And is there somebody else on athletics, or did I get it right? And Vince, sorry, Vince. Reach out. We'll be talking about it at our next athletic committee meeting, and unless there's a roadblock, we'll be coming back in March with a resolution to approve that merger at all levels. And again, it has to go well at both schools. The nice part for us is that Fort Edward's board meetings are on the Monday prior to ours, so we already know where they are before our meeting comes in. So they're on the same time frame. They'd be looking at. They must be March 13th, right? Because we'll be March 14th. March 13th is their scheduled March board meeting. We'll know what they have decided, and if they've said no, then we have less to talk about that night, which is good for all of you folks.
Okay. So let's move on to audit with Mrs. Grimaldi.
Okay, so we also kind of had a little bit of a lengthy audit committee meeting this month. I'll probably just go over some of the routine stuff, and then I'll hand it over to Mr. Hudson to talk a little bit about a budget update. So I'll start with the treasurer's report. This is for the month of December. We had $3 million in the general fund, $3 million in receipts, and 4.2 in disbursements, leaving us a balance of 3.7 in the general fund. And total cash on hand is 7.6 million. So we're in a good spot there. The monthly bills for January are in your board packets if anyone has, or board docs if anyone has any questions on those. Anyone have any questions? For extracurricular account balances, just some activity in here, which is always good to see. Middle School Student Council did quite a bit of fundraising, and then also made a donation to, I believe it was Operation. So that was, it's good to see that they are so active there. Cheerleaders also had some activity. So it's just nice to see a lot of this activity where our clubs are really very active and giving our kids good constructive things to do. So I will skip over the budget update and let Mr. Quincy do that at the end. There is a cooperative bid that we will be needing to approve today for BOCES. This is just allowing us to to work with BOCES to kind of get a bit, or to get a little bit better pricing on some of these cafeteria products that we use regularly for our cafeteria. There is also a request for proposal for our auditor that went out last week, I think, right? And the deadline on that is, I think, March 31st, so we will be seeking proposals for auditing services for the coming year. There is also a budget transfer in the board docs, and that was for some security alarms on the back of buses. So that's something really important for security for our kids. Requires the bus drivers to go to the back of the bus when they are finished with their bus routes and turn off an alarm so that they can, take the time to check and make sure there's no kids still left on the bus. So it's a really good thing in there, and we just have to approve the transfer of funding on that. And then there's also the appropriation status report that just gives us an idea of where we are in our budget cycle. And I think that's all I had. Mr. Clemson, you want to do budget update?
Just to add one thing for the RFP for the auditor. Just to add one thing for the RFP for the auditor. We use Jenkins, Beecher, and Bethel. We've been notified, as have the other 9 or 10 school districts in the area that they audit, that they are no longer doing audits. So we're actually a couple weeks ahead of people getting the RFP out because we happen to have the audit committee on February 8th. It was approved there, so we sent the audit out, but there's going to be 9 or 10 schools that are looking for new auditors, and there's really not a whole lot of audit firms that do school audits. You're really looking at 4, 5, 6, somewhere in that range. So we will have a new auditor this summer. So as far as the 23-24 budget, at the audit meeting, we met with the meeting being on February 8th, we were able to get the governor's proposal, which was good, because usually at our first meeting, we just basically do the framework of the budget, which we did do there, but we were also able to work in the preliminary revenue figures. So the governor's proposal is always the starting point when it comes to state aid for school district. This year, the governor has proposed a rather large increase to us. Obviously, what you see on state aid runs may not necessarily be exactly what we're going to get because there's some set-asides, there's some numbers that have to be subtracted out. But we did receive a rather large increase in state aid, which puts us in a great position because generally the governor's proposal is the starting point, and it generally will go up from there. Now, with the amount of increase in state aid across the state, the question is, will the legislators now come and put more money in, or will they try to jockey with where some of that money goes? The reason we got the larger increase in state aid, though, is it's that foundation aid that we've been owed for many years. So one of the things that can happen is she's fully implementing the foundation formula, so we're getting it all back this year. One of the things that can happen as they start jockeying to move money different places is they could say, well, make it 2-year phase-in instead of the 1-year phase-in, and our numbers could be backed off that way. So I'm cautiously optimistic. Generally, this is the starting point, and the number will at least stay the same or go higher. If that's the case, we're in very good shape as we operate, as we move forward with the budget process. We shared a multi-year comparison of budget with the audit committee. And basically what we did is we built the framework, the existing program, everything that we're running now, along with some other increases in program, some different items that we were looking to put in, adding some teaching positions, some 6 classes, things like that, to enhance the program. So after we go through our budget, the big one right now is health insurance for an increase in budget. We're looking at a 10% health insurance cost, which is over $800,000 right off the bat. And then we have all 4 of our collective bargaining agreements are settled through June 30, 2024. So when we apply those raises, that's nearly $1 million increase also over the base year. So right now, the budget looks good. moving forward. Obviously, we're going to fine tune this between now and our next meeting in March, and get it closer to where it's going to be as we're reviewing programs and doing all of the stuff that we do behind the scenes with budget. And we're just waiting. I know they've already started negotiating back and forth between the legislators and the governor. Hopefully that number holds, because that'll put us in a good spot. And it basically will be able to restore many things that we've had over that many years ago we had to take away due to state aid cuts. So basically they're fulfilling things that were taken away from 10 years ago, up to 10 years ago. So it's nice that, so when you see other school districts that did not get as large of an increase as us, well, they've had them, a lot of them have had the money all along, is the way that we have to look at it. So, but yeah, that's basically where we're at with budget. For 23, 24, like I said, we'll keep working at it, and we'll have more details for next month.
Thank you very much. Mr. Valenti, anyone have any questions? I think that includes everything I have for audit. We just have to do the approvals, treasurer's report, and the cost of defense, and then our.
Yep. So do we have a motion to accept the treasurer's report? Okay, second? Okay, all those in favor? Aye, excellent. And then, be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Hudson Falls Central School District approves the 2023-24 BOCES cooperative bids. Do we have a motion for that?
Second.
Crystal, Heidi, all those in favor? Okay. And then, be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Hudson Falls Central School District approves the request for proposal for independent audit services. Do we have a motion for that? Thank you, Mr. Canini. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Crystal. All those in favor? And then, what was the other one Kevin was saying?
We do have to approve the budget transfer that Crystal referenced for the bus supplies, transportation supplies. And again, turn my thing on. And again, that's for the student-safe alarms that are going on the buses. And we talked about that back in the fall, getting those. It just took a while to get them through the supply chain. But since that transfer is over 5,000, I can do 5,000 with my own approval. Anything over 5, the board has to approve at the next meeting. So that's why you have to have a motion to approve that budget transfer.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve that budget transfer? Thank you, Crystal. Second, Mike? Okay, all those in favor? Done.
Thank you.
Okay, so next is transportation with Dr. Steele.
You can read the DOT report there and the trip report. The big news this month is we had a driver come back off of injury, and we've managed to hire 2 more drivers for our transportation department. So they are starting, or will be starting very soon. So that's a very positive thing for us. There's a short update on the accident repair that was involved on bus 156. You can read that there. And as usual, there's fuel pricing on the bottom just for your information. And that was it for transportation this month.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Dr. Steele?
One question. So with the 2 new hires, how's that put us for overall staffing?
Sorry, numbers, I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah.
You okay?
How's it put us? We're operating. I would like about 5 more. But we're operating. It puts us in better shape than we were. But, yeah,
It provides the opportunity for some of our mechanics not to have to drive every single run.
Yep.
I'll say it that way.
That's the way I say it. Yep.
We have several that are doing double duty right now still, right? Do we know how many of those are driving in, still doing their mechanic work? Any idea?
All of them, depending on the
We
day.
have basically 3 or 4.
That are trying to do both right now?
Yep.
Correct.
Okay, anybody else? All right, on to buildings and grounds, and tonight Mr. Ward and potentially Mr. Palenci are going to cover that.
And potentially Mr. Canini, although I didn't tell him that until right now. So we met on January 25th, and that meeting was a little long as well. So I've been a little long-winded this month, must be, or every month must be. But we did have a conversation about scope 2 work. As you know, it took a long time to get approved, then we had to rebid because prices escalated. We've got a lot of work that we're trying to do here, and we've got some revenue sources that have to be used only for capital construction, like the Champlain Hudson Power Express coming on. So Mr. Wickman from March Associates talked about our building condition study, and we do want to get the building condition study completed this summer or just before, but it's usually when the students are here. I did see a purchase order come across for that to occur, because we have a lot of work left over from the previous project that the board had been talking about. And we want to hit that work. We also want to make sure we're not neglecting something that's starred in that building condition study as essential work while we're doing this process. So we had a long conversation about that. We also talked about the capital outlay project. We shared a list of possible items for capital outlay projects, and we had some discussion about how many of those should be in a full-size project. So we talked about that. We are going to have, as part of our budget newsletter, a section letting people know that we are putting a capital outlay project in our budget for next year. We intend to, pending the final numbers. That's a project up to $100,000 that you can do every single year that you get building aid back on. And you just have to make sure that people are aware that's being included in the budget that they're voting on. Doesn't need a separate vote, nothing like that. So we're working on a scope on that. Steve has a scope. So our main goal was to try to get one that we could get approved and through state ed in year one. That way the funds start flowing back. So $100,000 project. What's our building aid about, Kevin?
Roughly 88.8.
So 88.8. So you're gonna get $88,000 back of that 100. And so the second year when you're doing the capital outlay, you're only putting in that difference, right? So it's kind of a rolling thing where you can get some small projects done. It would be great if in the legislature they approve that amount going up to $250,000. Don't think that's getting a lot of traction, and we probably can't complain based on some of the initial numbers we have. Although I always like to complain that that's foundation aid that was owed to this district for a decade. Do not attach strings to it, because you did not attach strings to the schools that have been getting all along. I had to say it out loud. Anybody who's been in a meeting with me in the last 2 weeks has heard it. Update on current work. We're in a good spot. If you want to take a look, board members, after the meeting, you can poke your head in the auditorium. There's walls, the concrete's down. There's no people's names up on the walls in there. We did pick out some different finishes for the middle school to highlight that new entryway that's going in there. It's in the same spot, but there's a chance to highlight it to make it, I think, really pop against the current brick color, as well as draw people to that's the spot where the entrance is in the building. So twofold there. We talked about our EPC. That's moved right along. We actually have a lot of great information on that. Kevin was speaking with Bernie Donigan's office, and I popped into about the financials on that. We expect that Steve Wickman from March will have something ready for submission, but we do have to work in the public information part of that so we can get the additional 10% of aid that we talked about. That was like October now, right? We talked about this all months ago, but it's there now. At least it's there, ready to go to the state, and then however many weeks that might be. But we've got a good project ready to roll that's going to be no cost to the district because it's paid for through the energy savings. The district does take out a bond, but the bond and interest is paid through the energy savings. Over, I think our project's paid back over 18.7 years. 18 years, and you have to be right there. That's the maximum amount of years. So they got it done, and that's including the boiler room, which is something that we had to cut out of our main project due to the cost overruns. So we're going to get that done. I don't know if I forgot anything or anything else to add. I don't want to leave anybody out.
The only thing I would add is that with the way that we discussed doing the EPC is we will have to have a vote on that because we are looking for the additional 10% in building aid.
Yep.
Whereas if we weren't going out for the additional building aid, we could just do this project. But by going for the extra percentage, we have to vote on it.
Yep. Yeah, and that discussion that we did had, we were like, why wouldn't we ask our community to support that? It's going to be paid for by the energy savings. We're going to get our boiler room, we're going to get LED lighting across the district, and there's other items, I just can't remember them all right now, that we'd be trying to do in another project, our Phase 2 project. So let's do that through the EPC and recapture some of that work. That's what I had there.
Will that go with the budget?
So we haven't got the exact timing. That's one of the things we did mention. Does it go there? Does it go after? Does it go before? It depends on, part of it's Mr. Wickman having the plan ready to go to the state ed. There's some conversation about if it's better going to state ed, having the approval, or to Senate, letting them know when our vote's going to be. So there'll be pending approval, but it's already down there for people to look at. So we haven't come to a final answer on that yet, Crystal. On the radar, though.
Okay, any other questions? All righty. So for policy, we've got one policy on there for first read. It's 8450, home hospital or institutional instruction. And we have a nice little explanation down here, thanks to Mr. DiCaprio. This policy expands on a current policy, so it's updated to match new state ed regulations. It adds some definitions, requires the district to provide homebound, like for hospital, for example, instruction, and set up procedures for doing so. And as part of these regulations, the required weekly tutoring lengths change. It's up to 10 hours for elementary and up to 15 for secondary. And does anyone have a question on that policy, since it's on for first read? You guys good? Okay. So for second reads, there is 4 of them, 5570, 5731, 6140, and 7618. A lot of them were just removing teeny tiny little things. 5570, we removed a line, and the service recommends, so Erie One BOCES recommended that we put it back in. We thought we didn't need it, they said we do, so we put it back in. 5731, basically the same thing. We had removed a line, and they recommended we put it back in. And then for 6140 and 7618, both needed customization to our district specifically. So both of them having to do with needed lists that weren't complete in the version that they sent to us. So one about who gets physicals, and the other one was about when we might use a timeout room for a student. Okay, so those are second reads, so we will need to approve those. And then, before we're done with that, I just wanted to give a brief update on the DEI Ad Hoc Committee that met on January 26th. And we decided that for now was our last meeting, right? Or like maybe again in 6 months or something like that?
Yeah, so at the end of...
Or not at all?
At the end of that meeting, I asked the question, when do we need to meet again? And it was pretty quiet.
It was pretty quiet, okay.
So right now, I think we're good.
So you're going to see in your board docs here, where was it, somewhere, the slides from that meeting, so that you all can look through them. The administrators did a terrific job of outlining programs and initiatives that they have in place in each of their individual buildings that promote belonging, inclusion, and celebrate the diversity of our school community. So I don't know if you all had a chance to pop through those, but it was a really good meeting, and we appreciate what all the administrators did to show us everything they're doing. Okay, questions on anything? All right, so we need to approve some stuff here. Can I just do them all at once, Kelly?
Yes.
Okay. So do we have a motion to approve policy 5570, 5731, 6140, and 7618? Thank you, Heidi. Second?
Second.
Thanks, Crystal. All those in favor? Okay.
I'm going to interrupt one more time and just want to make sure I thank Mike for taking the lead on the policy committee. This meeting I wasn't even at. I was double booked, but either way, we had talked about Mike taking the lead on that, so I wanted to make sure I thanked him publicly for doing that work. It suits him.
Okay, so next is advocacy with Mrs. Andrikovics.
Okay, I'm gonna be brief. Last Friday was the virtual Capitol Conference. I did not get to make it, and I'm trying to see if they filmed it so that I can go over it. Tomorrow is the in-person lobby day for NYSBA delegates. I can't go, and nobody from advocacy could go due to work, but in the future, I think I'm gonna try and go check that out. My work caseload just didn't allow for it this year. And then this Thursday, is it too late for anybody to join me at the ASBA dinner? Well, dag nabbit.
They can still
So, yeah, I'll circle back around and let you know about the topic and how it was. Well, you go. 'cause
Chopped liver.
you love it. Oh, no,
No, that's what they're having for dinner.
My apologies.
I'm joking.
So, Dan and I will brief you on what the topic was and how it goes from this Thursday.
Can't remember.
And then, so it's a proposed budget right now, like Kevin said. So right now, advocacy is just budget,
Let's just
budget,
say we
budget,
did. Let's say we
keeping
did it.
budget
go ahead and say
everywhere. There's a lot going on with NISBA and the budget, but the things that are most salient for our board to keep an eye on is the foundation aid, and also that there is a caveat in the foundation aid increases that is for high-impact tutoring. And so, just to make the numbers round, like if we were gonna get $3 million of foundation aid restored, like a chunk such as like $500,000 is going to be withheld, and it can only be used for high-impact tutoring. So advocacy between now and the actual final budget is gonna probably look like advocating for that for either the $500,000 for $10 to be withheld and given separately for high-impact tutoring, or to have the strings pulled if it's going to be included in the increase in foundation aid. Was that
You got it, and if you want.
intelligible?
Absolutely, and if you want to hear some interesting numbers, do you have those memorized?
I do.
So Mike did some math, right? The work suits him. And he calculated how many hours. So do you want to take 15
Yeah.
seconds?
Sure, so the set aside of our, what do you need?
Are you on?
Nope. So the set aside of our restored foundation aid, which shouldn't have any strings attached, the set aside is something like $530,000. If that is used only for ELA and math tutoring in grades 3 through 8, which is the strings that they are attaching, it works out to 10,000 hours of tutoring, which is impossible. It works out to something like 35 hours per grade per week for the entire school year for those grades. And that being the only thing we're allowed to spend it on.
So if we don't provide those 10,000 hours,
It's money.
then it's money we
spent.
don't ever actualize.
Which is, again, to echo Mr. Ward, it's foundation aid. That's not, our-
Right,
that's
so either
not
make it a
strings attached.
secondary,
Right.
okay.
Sorry to interrupt you, but that's.
No, that was adding to it. And that's all I have for you.
So I would be remiss, and thank you to Amanda for reminding me that we went to the legislative breakfast, and we haven't had a board meeting since then, right? So they moved it to remote the night before because we were supposed to get the big snowstorm that didn't really materialize.
At all.
But they had to move it ahead of time. So Amanda came and we watched it in my office and participated. But we were able to hear some great things from our new regent, as well as from our legislators. And a box of goodies did come after the fact.
Of course it
I
did.
did not eat them. I think I might have sent them home with Mrs. Hensel. But we were there, we were represented, and I wanted to thank Amanda for pinch hitting for Jeff because he was unavailable to go at the, not the last minute, but about a week ahead of time, he knew he wouldn't be able to make it. So we're looking forward to being in person again next year, but that's how it rolled this year. Anything that you wanted to add about that?
No.
Good?
No.
All right.
Okay, so we are moving on to a presentation by Mr. DiCaprio.
Yep, thanks. So Mr. Ward asked me to take a few minutes and do a look back of the work of this office over the past few years, my time here coming up on the end of 4 years. I'll admit right off the bat, it's a little bit uncomfortable. It's in this role, it's not something I like to do. You can see right there that I prefer to make Mr. Ward look good, I prefer to make the principals look good, I
Tough job.
prefer to make the faculty look good, and not use the words I or me. But here we go. So none of this is glamorous work, but folks get busy. I keep in mind the big picture, the long term, keeping the gas pedal down and sticking to the plan. Probably boringly, annoyingly so sometimes, but that's it. Big picture, long-term, gas pedal. Let's keep going. This job, I've learned, is unique in education in that it looks very different depending on who sits in the superintendent's chair. There's always very specific business manager work that needs to be done, very specific principal work that needs to be done, but this job can change dramatically depending on who the superintendent is. So my work has had 3 very different looks across the last 4 years. All right. My first year here, 1920. So from my time at BOCES, I was familiar with my predecessors going back a long ways. So purposely, I'm coming at this job with the idea of offering stability, just to be consistent. I'm not bringing a brand. That first year is about establishing those relationships, understanding this place, making sure that any new work is Hudson Fallsified, as we say locally, not me bringing something and forcing a square peg in a round hole. So a couple of smaller things, but important things. We had a whole bunch of different coaches, instructional coaches over the years. One of the things I was asked to do was launch this Future Coaches or Future Leaders Academy. We had 10 or 12 teachers across the year that are viewed as future leaders. These are folks we could see as future liaisons, future department chairs, future administrators, future coaches, and we took them through a year of work. You've heard me say before, we've hired a lot of teachers in my time. We're over 70 teachers in the last 4 years. That first year, we hired 20 of them, and happy to say that 3/4 of them are still with us. Jumping ahead, we're now into COVID, right? My first year ended on March 13th. That was really basically the end of my first year. So the first year of COVID is really about where do we have to go to catch up, but what can we also move ahead? So you'll see the work there around the reboot teams. Most of you were here for the reboot team work. It was run by a principal, an assistant principal, a coach, and a handful of teachers for each of those groups with trying to figure out those questions. How do we pick up the pieces from March going forward, and how do we go forward to where we're supposed to get them this year? Also, proudly, I'd say, even during COVID, we were able to move some work forward. And you can see those there in the diamond ones. There's the vertical summits, and a lot of art curriculum work went forward, and a lot of science curriculum went forward. We changed the size, the shape, the focus of our instructional coaching program. And we started off on this ad hoc hiring committee, which you'll hear more about as the years go on. That really plays a part in our hiring efforts, but I'll say a little more about that going forward. That year, 16 teachers, 14 of them are still with us. Very happy about that. Still COVID. Following year, we're still in COVID. On this list, I'm not going to read it to you. On this list, there's good examples of the work I do, but the credit or the improvements shake out somewhere else. They don't fall back on my office, which is really the work I like, the work I prefer. So we created department liaisons that year. There are 6 through 12 department chairs, and the department liaison position was created to be a leader in the other building, right? If the department chair is in the high school, it's a leader in the middle school, so that communication can be consistent, that the voice of the other building is always heard, and that the message from the chair is always carried out back to the other building. I know we're only, say, 3 football fields away from that building, but it could be the Grand Canyon sometimes. So just adding that extra position with required communication, it goes a long way to smoothing out those departments. The school community coordinator came out of a different conversation. We were interviewing people for a different position, and this idea came around about who are we, and Tiger Pride, and uniting us with the community. And just based out of this other conversation I was having with teachers, as well as Mrs. French was there and Mrs. Strewing was there, this idea for the school community coordinator came about. We have Joy Wicks-Lindsay, that's the position Joy Wicks-Lindsay is filling, doing all of those great things 3 times a year. And the ad hoc hiring committee, that's a secondary principal currently serving as Mr. Whitty, an elementary principal currently serving as Mr. McTagg, and a director currently serving is Mrs. Miles from special ed. And the 3 of us started with the HR policy that you guys passed a few years ago in terms of how teachers should be hired, and we built the internal procedures based on that. Not super exciting, but that wasn't done before. So you had 5 different buildings with 5 different hiring processes, with 5 different timelines, with 5 different levels of teacher involvement. So that committee that first year took that policy and made sure that we're doing everything consistent, building by building by building by building by building. The following year, what we did was, because we're still in the midst of hiring a lot of people, then we took that committee to say, how can we speed things up? Where we found ourselves was most of our hiring was happening after the rest of the region did their hiring. We were in a place where we were not posting or doing our interviewing until June, July, May, very late. That's very late in the process regionally. So with that committee's help, we've backed it up. So jobs get posted now. They're posted in February, they're posted in March. We do our interviewing in March, April, and May so that we have our teachers in place for the summer, and we are right in the mix with the rest of the region. We are pulling out of the same pile of applications as every one of our other regional districts. And it's paid off. I'm looking over here at Mr. McTagg. It's paid off. We've had an increase in the number of candidates and an increase in the quality of candidates in the last couple of years. It's really been good work. So now you come out of COVID. Without COVID restrictions, we're able to tackle more things on the list. Some are big, some are small, some were needed fixes, and some are new improvements. And some have literally been waiting for 4 or 5 years since I got here to tackle. So you can sort through those. There's a lot on that list. And in fact, the dam is kind of broken because the list for this year spills over onto the next page as well. These are just the highlights of things that are worth noting. I hope again that they reflect that type of work, that there are improvements behind the scenes. Somebody else will probably get the credit for it being done, but these are the things that are managed by my desk. Big year for hiring, 32 teachers last year. I think we're still over 25. We're probably still over 27 or 28 retentions, but that's new. So lastly, looking ahead, 2 main points here. All right, if this was a look back, let's look forward a little bit. So 2 main points here. One is the stuff you're looking at on the screen. Really, just again, it boils down to consistency and reliability. Boringly consistent, boringly reliable. And I'm going to go back to my BOCES days. It takes a certain kind of character to work at BOCES because you're usually the person behind the scenes. Somebody else is always getting the credit for the work you do. That's fitting work, I think, for me. So I jotted down here, looking ahead, it is and always will be service. Serve the mission, serve the SUB, serve the faculty, benefit the students. Lastly, I'm going to take 30 seconds because you gave it to me. I'll just say that my BOCES gig let me see everybody. I was in 31 districts, that's 86 buildings. So I saw everybody's warts and achievements, everybody everywhere. So when it was time to consider what was next, there was a very short list of districts to consider. Very short list of districts where I considered going. I'm glad I'm here. That's all. So thanks for your time. Questions?
I have one quick question.
Please.
So I think I had watched a webinar or something on the seal of civic readiness
Yeah.
a few years ago. So I'm excited to see this about what that is and?
No, but I can give you a minute. So the Seal of Civic Readiness would be an endorsement that kids could earn for graduation. It's an indication that they've done an advanced set of work above and beyond their regular social studies work. It's a point system. Students earn points from 7th grade on. They have to earn 6 points. The points are earned, the easier ones are earned by passing classes and passing regents. You can earn more points by passing advanced courses or taking advanced tests. That only gets you so far. The 5th or 6th point, the points that will get you over the hump to get you the seal, require capstone projects. So that has been the real grindy part of the work. Where do we fit this research work in? At the high school, it will be research embedded into the classes. We found a couple spots across the 4 years where kids can do shorter research projects to earn points there. And we have one of our newer teachers in the middle school in the social studies department who says, I got this, we can crack this. So our kids coming out of middle school, starting next year, will have a point of the 6 coming out of 8th grade going into high school. So over the next couple of years, you'll see kids at graduation with Seal of Civic Readiness on their diplomas. Does that help?
It's a fairly new, that's great, yeah, and it's a fairly new program, right?
Brand new. So
Right.
this year, the only districts in the state are doing it are pilot districts. They picked, 50 districts across the state. Boston Spa is one, Greenwich is one, Shen is one maybe, but this is the pilot year. This coming year, it opens up to everybody, and we'll be in. We'll be there. All right, thanks.
Good. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
Okay. So we do have a need for an executive session tonight, right? That's where we're at?
Correct.
To discuss the employment of a specific individual and also to talk about contract negotiations. We do not anticipate any action happening from this executive session. So with that, do we have a motion to go into executive session? Okay, second? Okay, all those in favor? Beauty.
So we had a discussion. Person want to wait out there for us to reopen doors, you're welcome to it. But people who are watching online, this is going to conclude the streaming portion and the recorded portion of the meeting, which means, Mr. Watkins, once you're out of the room, you can go home this evening. Have a good night, everybody else who was here too in person. Yeah, happy Valentine's Day.